everybody. Welcome to Connect and Grow podcast. We've got an amazing guest today, Heena. I met Heena some time ago. We linked on LinkedIn, and then we got to meet in person when we were talking about politics and running for this local, like for the election, the federal election, and then obviously state. So, Heena, welcome to Connect and Grow podcast.
Thank you, Jackie. I'm so excited to be here today. And thank you for inviting me for your podcast. And yes, absolutely loved catching up with you for coffee. And, it's just really good to grow the connection outside LinkedIn as well. So
Yes.
thank you for that. Thanks for the intro as well.
You're welcome. And I know one of your amazing staff members from my second home with in Deb. So I met Deb years ago. So it was great when we've had my second home at our expo events as well. So that's been amazing. But today, while we may touch on, time permitting, we may touch on the NDIS because we do want to go to that. But let's start with your story and why you've decided to put yourself out there in politics. I mean, politics, wow, it's really a crazy place.
It is definitely a crazy place, Jackie, especially knowing that there is systemic, harassment and abuse against women in politics. So it was definitely a choice which had to be an informed choice that whether am I okay, do I want to put myself in there. My primary sort of motivation to join politics has been very clear, and I've been talking about it openly, that as a childhood sexual abuse survivor, I want to showcase to other survivors that they can be in powerful positions and work towards change. I also want to have a reform in the suppression orders in childhood sexual abuse cases, especially here in Victoria. Every year, around 500 suppression orders are appointed. That means that a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, even after when they are an adult, they need to take a court's permission to talk about their story.
Wow.
And I do believe that after certain time, telling your story is also a way of healing, and taking that away from the survivors is definitely dehumanizing their rights. So that's one of the main motivator for me to join politics, to support other survivors. And it is, childhood sexual abuse is a big issue. 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 boys are going to be abused sexually before they turn 18.
That's just horrible. It's not okay. It's just not.
It's not okay. And I know that in politics there are very less people who want to talk about it or address this issue because it's very uncomfortable. And I always try to remind people that, look, it is uncomfortable for you just to talk about it. Think about the child who's going through it, like what level of discomfort they might be going through. So that's the main motivation to join politics. And also, I do believe that in the past 10 years of being in Australia, I've seen firsthand that it doesn't look like democracy, because democracy should be from bottom to up. But all I see is leaders coming out and pushing their own agendas, parties coming out and pushing their own agendas, not listening enough to people. They're doing community consultations, but none of those things that are discussed are actually sort of worked on or paid attention on. So that's why I raised my hand. I'm like, I want to be a community representative, and hence I decided to run as an independent for the Senate. So I'm only accountable to my community, and I don't have party bosses, or I don't have to tiptoe party lines. And I can truly be accountable to the community. And I am a community backed independent senator, because as an independent, I did need to get signatures from enrolled voters, and that shows that our community knows who they want.
Mm.
And it's a matter of time. When I get in, whether it's this election or the next elections, I know that what my conscience is and what I stand for. So yeah, that's the
Yeah.
story of me entering politics.
And listening to you, and also our conversations that we've had off here as well, is, and that's one of the things I've said to you. You know, we talked about if you don't get in this time, and we talked about your policies, and it was like, well, and it was really clear then, and it's really clear now. You're not just in it for now. You're in it for the long run. Yeah. And I've been watching videos that are on social media. I'm not going to like name names, but a lot of people are talking about the similar sort of thing about it being, you know, coming from the bottom up. Because when we look at the major parties' policies, I sit there, I still shake my head and go, I don't know who to vote for, because neither of your policies, like neither of them have policies that I would even trust. But I think the biggest thing is, and I've talked about this a little bit today, is we want to be able to trust that our political leaders are actually not just listening to us and going, oh yeah, no, where's your follow up? Where's your action? And as for anything, a lot of people want to get the votes, so they go, oh, let's decrease taxes, or let's decrease this. But are you really going to do it? And from you, you've taken that stance on something that's very close to your heart. You've said, yeah, you're responsible and answering back to the community. So I love that about your stance and your goals.
Absolutely, Jackie. And I appreciate that you got that vibe from me as well. I think, I carry that vibe that I'm accountable to our community and nobody else. So
Mm,
if elected this time or next time, I would only be accountable to our community. And I often see it's good that you pointed out about the major parties and their policies. What I feel is that this is like a election bribe, that, oh, we are going to reduce the fuel prices by 25 cents per liter, or we are going to increase the taxes for EV. And both the parties have their own agendas. But
mm,
my point is, where is the fiscal responsibility? So
mm,
you want to give this short term benefit to people, which
mm,
is a bribe, as we
mm,
might say it open loud, because you're trying to give people this candy for now, that hey, we
mm,
are doing this. But how is it going to long term impact the country's
mm.
economy? Like,
Yes.
where is the research behind it? Like,
Mm,
why is there no transparency? You're saying, oh, we are going to reduce certain taxes, and that would open up the housing market for more people. But in long run, because
mm,
Australia's real estate is also a big major contributor to economy, how is it going to increase our dollar value globally? We are
mm,
not even talking about it. Nobody is talking about it. Everybody, all the major parties are pushing their agendas for this election, for now, what they're going to do. But nobody's taking into consideration how is it going to impact our country's economy in long run.
mm,
And I also see that nobody is actually thinking of increasing infrastructure in regional areas. I have
mm.
been hearing about the housing crisis over and over and over again from so many different people. And
Yes.
major party solutions are, oh, we'll build these houses, we'll do this, we'll do that. But what about the carbon footprint? When you're
Mm,
building houses, how much is it going to affect the climate? And
mm,
why are we overcrowding? We don't want to create heat islands, right?
mm, mm,
So where is the discretion? Like, where is the detailed logic behind what they are saying?
mm,
And in my plan, I've talked about increasing infrastructure in regional Victoria, because
mm,
I believe that there is a lot of potential in our regional areas, and we should be investing in increasing the value of our regional areas, and also incentivizing businesses who want to open in regional areas, because it's
yeah.
clear, like, if you shut down hospitals, if you remove funding, people from regional areas would want to be closer to metropolitan areas where they can access these services. So it further kind of, it further aggravates the housing crisis, because people from remote areas want to move to closer areas where they have access to healthcare, where they have access to other things they need.
Yeah.
So in my policy, I've talked clearly about investing in regional infrastructure, and that would add value to our country.
Yes.
We could work on setting up manufacturing factories which
Yes.
work on renewable energy, um, things which add value to our country. We essentially get everything from overseas. A lot
Mhm.
of things we get imported from overseas. We're not doing much manufacturing at all in Australia,
No.
and nobody wants to talk about it, or somehow if is the maths too hard for them to do. I
Yeah.
don't know, but I thought as major parties they would have consultants and so many people guiding them, but it
They
doesn't
they
seem like that.
probably do. But even the talk, and once again, it's just talk. We don't really know what's going to happen. But the talk about cutting funding to hospitals, education, NDIS, which you and I are both passionate about as well. And it's kind of like, have you been in a public hospital recently? Like, have you actually walked in and talked to the people? Because over the last 2 years, I've been in the hospital either for myself or for someone else, and I remember even things like feeling nauseous and saying to the nurse, "Could I please have a vomit bag?" And she goes, "Actually, we're all out." And I went, "You're kidding me!"
Healing.
And this was even before the election, and I'm like, um, well, what's the solution here? And it's things that, and then if we talk about the NDIS, well, we know that they've slowed the growth of how many people can access it. But I was doing the math on that one, and there's roughly 600, like last year in December, there was around 690,000 people accessing the scheme in some capacity. And then when we look at the number of providers, that's everybody, plan managers, support workers, everybody, the figures are around 217,000. Now, and then the budget at the time was 54 billion. If you divide the 54 billion, so with the B, by the number of participants, it's an average plan of $65,000. If we divided it evenly, which is never going to happen because of a person's care needs, they're always going to be different. But if you look at then how many providers there are, knowing that there's at least 20 top providers that are employing 100 plus staff, even if we divided the number of participants by the number of providers, there's only about three participants per provider, and everybody's out there competing and, similar to politics, promising things. Oh, come with us and we'll give you a free iPad, and then those broken promises and broken trust. And I think at the moment, if Australia can come back to overall being more self-sufficient, we sent our paper off overseas. We don't do that. We sent our car industry off overseas. What happens if things go awry, like what's going on in America? Where does that leave us as Australians? And I think that these are the topics that benefit all Australians.
Absolutely, absolutely. I do agree to you about the NDIS space. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to a peak body called ACIA, and even in our meeting, we sort of discussed that there are gaps in the quality standards as well, and that is one of the reasons why there is lack of faith or lack of trust towards providers. Being a co-founder and director of an NDIS registered organization myself, I know that not everybody is doing the right thing, and I also know that not everybody is doing the wrong thing. So
Correct.
but there are also people who are in between, who just don't know, like and then you don't know what you don't know, so then they're providing this support, but they don't know about incident reporting, or they don't know about medication administration, and often these people sometimes could be sole traders, so they're just working for themselves, and they probably have 3 or 4 clients, but they're missing out on knowing about the mandatory reporting when something goes wrong. So I do believe that a well regulated and a well cared NDIS is not a cost. It actually is increasing the capacity of people with disabilities to participate not only in the community but even like socio-economically, like working towards getting a job
Yeah.
and having contributions back to the community. So I agree with the point that yes, there has been a lot of you know fear mongering from the major parties about the NDIS, whereas I would say that people on the NDIS, carers on the NDIS, some of them are great researchers. They have done the work, they have consulted with the community. Why not bring those voices into the parliament? Why not bring the work that they have already done? They have spent hours and hours. Renee Fisher, Mark Toomey, these people have already done the work. All we need is to bring it to the parliament. It's
Yeah.
not that hard. It's not
No.
that hard.
And
But
it's dealing with their data,
exactly,
right? Like
exactly.
it's not like, because both you and I see a lot of Renee's work, and it's very detailed, and she's dug very deep, and none of that is easy in the sense of collating it. Like I said to Renee at one point, this is really amazing. She goes, "Oh, I wish I was a better writer," and I went,
Yeah,
"You don't need to improve that, like and." Because she does cover the details, and she's giving us and the rest of whoever wants to read it access to the data that the NDIS has produced. And I think that if we can build quality services where there is more accountability for all businesses, including the sole traders, I often have a lot of discussions with the sole traders. And I say, you're a business first and foremost. It doesn't matter whether it's NDIS or a carpenter or a cleaner or whomever. You are a business first and foremost. And there's legislation about having a business. But for some unknown reason, there seems to be this concept of, oh, it's just NDIS. I'm just a sole trader. I don't need risk management. I don't need incident management. So, and I think that then that's literally putting the people that you're providing a service to at risk. And many of them have already been through so much by living with the disability, by their fight to get onto the NDIS, by attending planning meetings that don't make any sense to them.
absolutely.
And then you're just going to come along and go, I don't know what that medication is, but that's okay. Here you go. You just have it. Like, some accountability. But I think it's going to be a long, hard battle, because we do see just recently there was changes on that page on the NDIS website. So for listeners, you can go to the NDIS website around the legislation, and it tells you what's new. And so just recently something else has dropped. And then in the provider newsletter, they started talking about NDIS navigators. Okay, but what does that mean? Because you were talking about mandatory registration for support coordinators. Do they have
Yeah.
So, and this is where politics and NDIS actually have a little bit of the same philosophy of, we'll just give you a little bit of information and then we'll leave you guessing for the rest.
I agree with that, to be honest, Jackie. Even for foundational supports, as for example, foundational supports, we were talking about foundational supports last year. I remember attending the DSC conference where Bill Shorten had, announced about the foundational supports that, we will be diversifying, and, people who are not eligible on the NDIS but still need supports, they would be able to access foundational supports. But where is more information about it? Like, even if you search about it, or even if you try to call somebody in the NDIS to know more, they don't know. They don't have the information. And then For Bill Shorten to go there and badmouth every provider on this earth and every participant and family, and just group them into frauds, or group them into, oh, people are getting tickets to cruise, people are getting tickets to Disneyland. And I'm like, why are you generalizing it? You're over generalizing it by putting everybody into the same basket. There are hundreds of providers who are doing the right thing. There are thousands of participants who genuinely need that support. So just putting them all to in the same basket just showcases the insensitivity and lack of knowledge himself, because you can't overgeneralize, and you can't put everybody in the same basket. So as you said, yes, every now and then they would drop in something new, and then you keep guessing what it is. And if you try to contact them, there is no information about it. So we can't trust our politicians because they won't be giving us the 100% truth. And B, when they do give the truth, we don't have any idea. So about the navigator roles, for example, will there be transparency in terms of who gets the contract, or is it going to be given to the select few people who the politicians know? So this is the kind of office I want to run for, to have transparency in it. Because I'm not sure if you're aware or not, I did write a complaint to the ANAO, Australian National Audit Office,
Right.
Regarding regarding the pilot program given to Mind Australia for SIL services.
Yep.
And when I questioned them and I submitted the complaint, they reached out to me and said, oh, you must take down this post. And I was like, well, I'm happy to take down the post if you're able to give me the information that how much funding did you get. And the person from the other end, she's like, we just got the $50,000 funding. And I'm like, I'm not talking about just the $50,000 you got for funding. I'm talking about how much business did you get, because now you are the pilot partner for SIL housing. And I also raised concerns about Scope Australia, where we saw it on television, the kind of abuse that was, done to the NDIS participant by a staff member. And there was no sort of no consequences for the director or the higher up. Like, as a business owner, I take full accountability of whatever happens in my organization. And if Scope Australia was a small to medium sized organization, then they would have automatically deregistered the organization. But because it's a big organization with, I don't know who's sitting on the board, but they get a slap on the wrist. And other people sometimes might not even be doing as much wrong. And by saying that, I'm not saying that when people are doing wrong, they shouldn't they shouldn't have consequences. But I also feel there should be equality in the consequences. You can't just give a slap on the wrist of big providers who you personally know or are somehow connected, and just ruin some other small to medium sized businesses because you want your headlines to showcase that there are so many frauds.
It's slowed down a bit, but from probably the last 18 months, I've been getting a lot of calls from mostly registered providers, but it did start to change to the sole traders that are in payment lock. Now, I've spoken and done posts about payment locks quite a bit, because I'm very big on get your documents, your policies, procedures, set your business up properly. And a lot of people tell me where I can shove that idea, and then they end up in payment lock, and they haven't got exactly what it is that I've already been saying you should have in place as part of your business basic structure. And payment locks can take 6 months to lift. And the other thing that I'm starting to notice a trend in is that, and I've heard this directly from providers as well, where the funding has run out. Now, we know that there'll be two reasons why funding has run out. One will be participant driven, so they want more supports than they really can afford. And the second one is the provider driven supports. And I would say, and a lot of planners have now been, if the participant's gone to plan review because they've run out of funding, which is now not a reason to go to plan review. It's just like, oh, well, too bad, you can just wait. providers then don't get paid, and then that can impact their business. But then the providers are being reported to the payment integrity team because the funds have run out, which then puts the provider in payment lock for all of their services, and that can take months. And then they may, depending on which person they work with, they may get that money. But if they've got no evidence that they did the shifts,
Jackie, to be honest, I do believe that there should be accountability from the provider side. As you said, like, you are giving out free resources and information to people. So I do think that, if ever it is the right time, it is now to get your business sorted, whether you're a sole trader or you're a small company or you're a medium-sized company, and make sure that you have everything that you need. For example, in our organization, we have shift notes. We just send them across with the invoice, because we just found it easier rather than the back and forth. When we submit the invoice, we put the notes together and send the report together, so it increases sort of the chances of getting quick payment.
yeah.
And I know a lot of providers have shut down or had to give their clients to other providers because they could no longer sustain their business because of the payment logs. And I did share with them what I was doing in my organization, but still the delays are still pretty crazy, Jackie. At this given point of time, you know over 150K is owed by the NDIA to us. It's just back and forth, delays, even after providing all the evidence. So I can only imagine, for somebody who's not providing evidence, would be in so much more trouble. And I think that's the right thing. Like, I do believe that there has to be regulation, because we don't want people with disabilities to be taken advantage of by the providers either.
And as you said, and some of these providers that have ended up in payment lock are so, they've got everything in place. The funds ran out. So then it was more of a, well, why did they run out? And I'm seeing social media posts all the time of, oh, I need more money in my plan. And I think that we maybe need to, maybe the message from the NDIS or from Amanda, Richard, whomever, even Louise and Natalie at the NDIA, saying this is actually the purpose of the NDIS. Let's come back to a lot of clarity. Let's not so much separate registered providers and unregistered providers. It should be the same thing. If you don't want to register everybody, if you don't want to mandate that's cool. But let's have some consistency in messaging with clear consequences that are delivered. I remember I listened to a podcast, and the talk that Louise and Natalie were on there, and it was Dr. George's podcast, and it was talking about complaints. And I went, if there is a complaint against an unregistered provider, it really doesn't go very far at all. And the number of registered providers is maybe at a push, maybe a quarter or less of the overall providers. So that's a lot of people that want to speak up, and once again, it still comes back to politics as well. And that's why I love your campaign of that accountability, that if someone's coming to you, you might not be able to fix their problem straight away, but you might be able to go and, as we've talked about, if it's in the NDIS, it might be talking to someone like Renee that goes, hey, have you got any data on this? So you're getting that complaint or that feedback or that issue, and then you can say, okay, where can I just get a bit more information, and what can we do now, and what's our long-term approach?
Absolutely, Jackie. And I do believe, as I pointed out earlier, that a well and clean NDIS is not a cost to the community. And this is something which major politicians miss out on. They are seeing this as a cost.
Yep.
maybe they have never worked with a person with a disability, or they themselves don't know that they don't have any family members. So people who have no touch with people with disabilities, they are seeing people with disabilities as a liability. But from
Mm.
me, working in this sector, I know the capabilities of a person with disability and what they can achieve, how far they can go, and how much meaningful contributions they're doing to the community.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about knowing, seeing the potential, and knowing that a well and a cleanly managed NDIS is not a cost to the community. It actually adds value to
Mm-hmm.
our community. And that is what I want to do. I might not have all the answers straight away. This is
Mm.
my first time entering politics, Jackie. So as you know, I am learning.
Times too.
I'm learning every single day. And I for sure know that there are experts who have done the work. So why are we not using the work already done? It's free of cost. You don't even need to pay taxpayers funding trying to organize, big consultations and, big meetings and spending millions of dollars, when there are people out there who are already done the work, who are already
Mm.
doing the work. They're ready to offer their advice.
Mm.
Then why not use that? And there's a lot of waste in the NDIS. Let's be honest about it,
Mm.
because yes, there was concerns about the growing NDIS costs, but let's look into how much waste of money has gone in the administrative side of things in the
Mm.
NDIS compared to Renee has actually done that analysis of how
Yes.
much has gone towards administrative costs, how much is actually participant funded supports, like supports
Yes.
that our participants getting. So nobody wants to talk about that. They're like, oh, the scheme is growing, the scheme is growing. Of course the scheme is growing because you want to have multiple layers of people working on multiple things, not communicating with each other.
Mm.
ART is not talking to the commission. The
Mm.
Safeguard Commission is saying, oh, non-registered providers, we can't do much. So it's like people are just, it just feels like, people in the NDIS, in the government, are just
Mm.
not talking to each other. Because you can
Literally.
clearly see, you can clearly see that one
Yeah.
person is saying something, the other is saying something.
Mm.
And I'm thinking to myself, just open your eyes and see, here are the solutions. The community has already worked out a solution. All you need
For
to do,
free.
for
For
free. For free, exactly. The community has worked out solutions for you for free. You don't even need to spend millions of dollars
Yeah.
hiring all these consultants. And I don't know. I mean, to be honest, there is lack of transparency in this. So I don't even know what connections are there and who gets the contracts. But it doesn't feel right. It doesn't look right from the outside. So
Mm.
I would say that more transparency is required in declaring where the money is being used.
Yeah, and it's the same as the hospital system as well. Like, because often when somebody runs out of funding and the provider just can't do it, they're high intensity support, they end up in the hospital system. And the only reason that their funding gets sorted quickly is because it's the hospital system going, and the NDIS liaison person talking back to the NDIS going, you know what, we can't keep this person in hospital. And, hospitals, like everywhere else, they have their KPIs. So, they have that you can't sit in ED for that long, if otherwise it costs them money and things like that. So the ambulances are lining up, and then they're out of service because I have to stay with the person until they're admitted to hospital. And we are very lucky in Australia to have the health system that we have. Like, sure, you might have to pay a bit at the GP and things like that, but wherever we go, if we can just try and support each other a little bit more and actually properly listen to people, like, and even and go and talk to people like Renee, who all she wants to do is make a difference and just call it out for what it is, but not in a malice way, in a I don't get this kind of way. How do you say that this money, it's not viable? The NDIS, the hospitals, education, they're all putting money back into society, into our ecosystem, because if a person has a job, they go and get paid for that job, they could then go and maybe buy flowers, or they could buy groceries, or they could buy a house, or it goes and helps other industries. So if we can build a lovely ecosystem that's actually supportive and embracing the vastness and the amazingness of Australia. I'm 58. I know I'm dreaming, but
No, there is no dream too big, Jackie. I think a lot of people are becoming more aware, and a lot more people are stepping out and saying, hey, that's enough. Like, in whatever capacity, whether it's through spreading the information about the kind of person you want to see in the parliament, or whether it's through advocating for the things that matter for you, whether through social media or LinkedIn. I think people are becoming more aware, and also people are fed up by the lies, and people are fed up by getting ignored. Because as you mentioned, like, I have known Renee for sort of like a little bit around 8 to 9 months, and we haven't met, but we've always sort of connected on LinkedIn. And I've always loved the way she has raised questions, because that makes sense. She has evidence of what she's talking. And a lot of politicians might find her threatening, because she has the reality, she has the data to prove what she's saying. But for somebody like me, she's a blessing, because it helps me to have a point of reference
yes,
when I'm having conversations with people. Hey, that's not right, because this is the post and this is where she's talked about it, and look at the credentials of the data
yeah,
she has mentioned.
yeah,
So I think this would only happen, and a community, or an ecology of systems working together will only happen when people are able to raise their voice for the issues that matter,
yeah,
without facing discrimination. Because
yes,
um, when I decided to run for Senate, and a part of it also includes Facebook marketing for what I'm saying, or ad campaigns, because Senate election essentially requires 14% to meet the quota to win the Senate seat. So that is like 500K people voting primary number one for me. So obviously we use different strategies, word of mouth, Facebook campaign. And I just see there's so much hatred in people. Like, some of the comments that I get, go back to where you're from, or um, you guys own every servo, every taxi service, and fast food. Now you want to get in government too. And I'm thinking, I'm doing this for my community. Like, this is as much as my country as it's yours. I have given birth to my kids here. I have contributed to the society. I have done the paperwork to become a citizen. I have done the paperwork to become an independent candidate and got support from endorsed people. But there's just so much hatred as well. And I think this hatred, major political parties, they want to create this divide, because if they don't create this divide, they are not going to win the vote. So I often hear from Peter Dutton, or just blaming women for certain thing, or just blaming a particular group of people for certain thing, to create this hatred. So when people are wearing the glasses of hatred, they can't see that whether a person is actually advocating for them, or
yeah,
is doing the right thing. So
yeah,
that's something in politics as well, which politicians would never address openly, because they just want to deny. But if you look at the speeches, if you look at the things,
the
it
campaigns.
clearly showcases the kind of divide they want to create. So, like, they want to create a divide from, say, for example, people on the NDIS to the non-NDIS people. So they will talk shit about NDIS when they are talking to the general public, because they are like, oh, this is your taxpayers' money and this is being misused and blah, blah, blah. And
Look at all the fraud, and
look at
yeah,
all the fraud. But at the same time, they are wasting that taxpayers' money too, by spending millions of dollars on their election campaign. So they don't want to talk about those taxpayers' money, but they want to create this divide between non-NDIS community people and the NDIS community people. And if you see a pattern, there is a pattern. If you closely look at the speeches from the major parties, there is a pattern to create divide.
Mm.
There is a
And
pattern to
even,
it.
and I think from what I've seen, and I try not to dive into politics too much just because of my neurodivergent traits. I get extremely anxious because I can't create a change. Like I can have conversations, I can be on committees and things like that, but I don't feel heard, similar to Renee and other people. But I think what I'm hearing is that they're doing both major parties are doing their absolute best to win the votes, and the cost of living is one of those things. And the NDIS is definitely very much misunderstood by a lot of people. I know people that are not connected in any way. Like, even if I put up a post and I happen to put those letters NDIS, I do get slammed. And it's one of those things about, have you actually looked at the good it's doing? And it's really hard to get data of the providers that are doing the good job because people are too afraid to speak up. In Connect and Grow magazine, my little magazine, we used to do success stories from people that have had really great outcomes on NDIS. But I think both major parties, from what I've heard from snippets, they are both talking about cuts to the amount of federal funding for NDIS. We know that National Cabinet almost 18 months ago said, yes, the funding for NDIS needs to be split and back to states. But a huge part of that discussion was the foundational supports. We don't know where it is or what it's doing, but that conversation, they have started a little bit on that because they've set up a hub. But there's also, we've seen a lot of participants being graduated, I think was the word that's used, off the scheme. And I think that we're going to see anywhere from the 1st of July onwards, massive changes in the NDIS. And I hope that they don't cut the funding, as they've said, about hospitals and education and NDIS and aged care, because that is our future.
Absolutely. And this is very simple maths for me, Jackie. Like I think of it like this, right? So some, like, say for example, liberals are pushing for nuclear. Okay, they're pushing for nuclear. That's going to cost $330 billion,
Right.
and it's going to take forever long to make the new. We have no idea. We don't have the skill set. We don't know how to make it. We don't even manufacture a water bottle in Australia. Even that comes from outside. So for a major party to come out there and say, hey, we are going to do this and we're going to spend 330 billion on doing this, and obviously while they're building it, then the prices will increase, so that like any other project, like, even if it's like the Westgate tunnel, like, it started at 5 and now it's at 10 billion, still not completed. So all these flashy big ideas of spending so much money on things which clearly are not good for the climate, which is not, doctors have been coming out and talking about the health implications of nuclear reactors for energy. And it's not renewable. It is a clean energy, but it's not renewable. And there are health risks straight from the point when you mine the raw materials, when you're mining uranium. So they're trying to push all these agendas, and then they're saying, oh, NDIS funding needs to be cut, or public hospitals, because even in Rosebud and Mansfield is, so much in need to have the public hospital there, because a lot of people go skiing to Mount Buller. And if you remove the hospital from Mansfield, then we are going to have to send helicopters in case of emergencies, because there's no close by hospital. So I don't understand that, where does this come, or where does this make sense, that hey, we want to spend this much on nuclear, which clearly experts are saying that it's not good for the health, doctors are saying it's not good for the health, climate practitioners are saying, environmentalists are saying it's not good for health. They are okay to spend that money, but they don't want to spend money on people. They don't want to spend money on education. They don't want to spend money on hospitals. It just sounds fishy, because to me, like, from an outsider perspective, where would that money go?
Yeah.
Who is going to get that money? I would like to follow the trail if
Mm.
liberals do win and they push for nuclear. Is I want to see where the money is going,
And
because
yeah,
it doesn't sound right at all.
and a lot of private hospitals are actually struggling. There's been private hospitals that have actually closed their doors. So even, if we look at what happens in America, if you don't have health insurance, you can't access hospital or health treatment. And that's the last place we want to be. We actually have a really good health system. Now, it could do better. I've worked in the health system. I worked at a big Melbourne hospital, and I did complaints there. So I actually reached out to Natalie Wade after her podcast, and I said, I would love to help you set up a system that actually can manage this feedback, and that, because if we look at it as feedback and use it for growth as an opportunity, then it's got potential. But it just feels like there's this huge weight on Australia at the moment of like, where do we go? I mean, we, especially being in Victoria, we survived the world's longest lockdown. We survived it, but a lot of businesses didn't. Where do we go if we keep closing or cutting funding for things? How do people actually have a roof over their head? Homelessness is really high. Empty houses are sitting. There's so many empty houses sitting empty because people can't afford the rent and they're living in their car. There's every winter I make, and I've just started now, I make scarves and beanies for people that are homeless, and I hand them out as much as I can. Sometimes I get a lot done, sometimes I only get a few, but there are so many people lining up at food banks now. And then with all of that homelessness and stress and worry and anxiety, that then impacts health, which then needs a health system that can actually support them, and a mental health system that can support them. So I would just love to see Australia come back to our basics of being a humane country that actually doesn't
Yes.
ruin what foundation we have. That's just my personal opinion.
I get it, Jackie. I completely get it, and I also know, because homelessness and housing crisis has been a big issue, and I see how twisted some politicians can talk about it in terms of what they're going to do or how they're going to do it. But then I'm also thinking about, there are so many Victorian women who are wanting to flee from domestic violence, but they cannot leave because they are going to become homeless.
Mm,
So, we have to address it holistically. We can't
mm,
just separate the housing crisis from domestic violence as well, because there are reasons that people are sleeping in their car because they are fleeing domestic violence. The
mm.
domestic violence shelters are sending them back because they don't have, they're at capacity and they
Yeah.
can't support them. So these are the issues that our community is facing right now. But when I talk to, or when I listen to politicians from major parties, it just seems like they are talking points to them. They don't want to
Yes.
dive deep
Yeah.
into it, or do anything about it, because all they're thinking about, hey, I want to say this right thing so I can get the vote of
Mm,
these people, and then I'll go there and then I'll say this right thing so I can get the vote for people. But if you try to understand and ask them a question which requires more than one liners,
yep.
uh,
They've got nothing.
there's nothing. And then obviously then it goes back to when you meet representatives from parties, they
Yes.
will tell you, oh, send me an email and I'll get
Yep.
back to you. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm standing right in front of you, and this is a forum to ask questions. So what are your thoughts about suppression orders, or about
Mm,
domestic violence victims? Every six
mm,
minutes by the time we drink a cup of coffee, a woman has called for help to Victorian police. So every 6 minutes it's
mm,
happening in Victoria.
mm,
And nobody seems to want to talk about the on ground issues. I just feel
mm.
like there's all this big talk about big things and big funding, but what about like the community, like on the ground, what are the issues that we are facing? Don't just make cost of living or housing crisis as a buzzword for interviews, but actually try to understand how we can resolve it.
mm,
And Australia is a very lucky country in terms of resources that we have gotten, but the
mm,
problem is for the past 50 years we haven't increased our value. We haven't, as an economy, we haven't increased our value. We haven't done enough. uh, I mean, let's just talk about technology and AI. Like, Australia doesn't even have its own AI model.
no,
And when are we going to do that? Are we going to use DeepSeek from China? Are we going to use ChatGPT forever? As a
mm,
government, these are the things which we should be talking about: how we add value to our country,
yeah,
how we increase our dollar value. So, when we are building, when we are importing things, it doesn't cost us an arm and a leg to do so.
mm, mm,
So I
mm,
just feel that's
mm,
kind of missing, and that's why I'm in here, in politics, to actually shine the light on the issues that people are
mm,
facing, and not
mm,
just treat it as a buzzword that, oh, elections are coming, let's just talk about housing crisis, let's just talk about cost of living. In my policies, if you go on my website, so
mm,
listeners, if you want
mm,
to look into my cost of living policy, I have done the modeling from Sweden, where it has worked amazingly, where we do have regulatory bodies on the pricing,
mhm,
and there is a scope for immediate relief. So certain essential groceries should be able to you know people should be able to afford that,
mm,
um, and they should be coming as a package. And big corporations can't just increase the prices of these things without consulting with the regulatory bodies. So
yeah.
for who's interested in listening,
No, that's a
knowing
good
more
one.
about cost of living, I have done the research. It is back on there. There is a way we can come out of it, but I just don't listen of deep strategies when it
Mm,
comes from major parties. It's
yeah.
more like a buzzword, as I would say.
And that's the thing. I think the more people that speak up, I did see someone that was talking about if there's more independents that actually win their seats. So sure, we're going to have either Labor, probably Labor or Liberal will win. Like, I just think that's the potential. So let's just pretend one of those win. But if there's a lot of seats taken up by independents, it actually changes the way Senate works. So, people, if you're watching this before Saturday, and you're voting, then have a look at the independents as well, and have a look at their policies. Don't just check their statement. Just actually look at what they're really about. Like Hina has said, she's got that research that she's done from Switzerland, wasn't it?
from
Yeah.
S- from Sweden,
Oh,
because
sorry,
they
from
do
Sweden.
have a model.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And she's got that information there. So when you're looking to vote, and I know that a lot of people are, I have to vote because I don't want the fine. But maybe if you've got time, take the opportunity to look at what some of the independents really stand for. And if it's in alignment with your values, maybe take that time to vote because the more that the independents have seats, the way Senate, so one major party can win the election, but Senate decisions are impacted by the people sitting in Senate. And if there's more independents in there, sure, there's going to be more robust discussions, but it's not the dominant party leading the way, making that final stamp. So just, it's up to you. I'm not telling you how to vote, but we've talked about some really valid points here today. And I think the thing is that if you could give one message to people moving forward for the future of Australia, what would that be?
My one message to people would be that, it is high time that you actively participate in politics, because if you are one of those people, which we all are, impacted by what is happening around us, just just spend the time to do your research and make your voice count. Don't let it go. We are in a democracy. I know that a lot of people think that, oh, what is one vote going to do, or what is my voice going to do? But that is the beauty of democracy. Your vote counts. So don't just cast it because you want to not get a fine. Do your research, look for independence, reach out. If you feel you want to reach out to me, on my website there is my phone number and my email address. Reach out to me. I'm happy to give answers to your questions, because that is how we build good governance. When we talk to each other, we understand what our point of view is. So do your research, actively participate in democracy. Don't let major parties take you for granted and think, oh, because they're liberal followers, they're just going to do that without looking into the policies. So things have changed. A lot of parties have changed their policies even during the election cycle going on. So just check that, whether the values align with you, and whether the person you're choosing is going to be accountable and is going to be answerable to you, or are they going to be answerable to the donors who have put funding in their campaigns. So that's my advice, because that is how you can make your voice count, by making an informed decision. And reach out to people. If you find a candidate is good, reach out to them. Most of the times they will respond back to you. And that's not just me, even other independent candidates. Reach out to them, because there is power in independent candidates, because they are not liable to parties. They are only liable and accountable to answer back to the community. So that's my advice.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Well, it's been great having you on today. We've had a really good discussion about a few different things. So if you're watching this and you think it's just all about politics, no, that's just the basis. Just listen to the whole thing. And remember to just check out what Heena's saying. Like, to go and look. She's a real person that's actually listening, and it's worth connecting with her. So do that. But thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you. It was lovely. Thanks so much for having me.